quieter than a bigger crisis. The gifts that we sense are in us, longing to be shared. The version of ourselves that we keep glimpsing, and the years pass while we wait to feel ready. I see the soul as the opening through which spirit moves into our lives. Do you feel like you've done everything right, or at least worked really hard to? Your career, your relationships that you've made great effort with, the personal growth that you've done, maybe your health journey, making an effort to stay healthy and strong, maybe even going to retreats and courses and therapies and reading all the books, and yet still feel a quiet ache underneath all of it. Maybe a sense that something essential is missing, even when your life looks fine from the outside. I believe this relates to one of the most widespread and least acknowledged experiences women are having today. Welcome to Soul Knows the Way, a podcast for women in the second half of life who sense a soul hunger they can no longer ignore, a longing for depth, truth, and a life lived from the inside out. I'm Kim Marie, soul guide and author, and I'm here to walk the soul journey with you. I am so glad you are here. So today we are going to name this experience, to understand it, and to begin to find our way through it together. There's a specific reason this experience goes unrecognized, even by the women living it. And I'll get to that, more of that as we go. But we're also going to be exploring what becomes possible when a woman finally turns toward what she's been feeling and names this experience. So maybe grab a cup of tea and let's settle in. I want to begin by sharing a story with you. Stories are such a powerful way to connect with the soul, to connect on a deeper level. And this story isn't entirely fictional. It begins with the good girl. Many of us can relate to the good girl who did everything right. As a young girl, she listened to her elders, she paid attention in school, got good grades, followed all the rules. She worked very hard. She excelled in nearly everything she did. She really tried to listen in church and do all the right things. And as she grew up and became a young adult, in the journey to do so, she got herself educated. She learned more about how to be healthy, truly healthy, how to relate with others, and how to make a living and succeed by abiding by the laws and doing all the right things, getting the good jobs, and just how to know the world, how to be in the world. After all, it's good to listen to authority, right? Others probably know more than we do, right? She thought. Then, after a time, she entered into the outer wilderness of life. She became more or less an obedient seeker, struggled to find her place for sure. And as she struggled, she realized she just didn't quite know what was going on. And so she sought guidance outside of herself. After all, they should know better. They've done this before, right? Well, she decided to try going back to church, but as she tried a few different places, the minister, the rabbi, the priest, they didn't seem to really resonate. Something about the teachings. She wasn't too keen on some of the hypocrisy, a lot of the dogma. She really struggled with it and thought, gosh, what's wrong with me that I'm not resonating with this? And then she decided to throw herself into her work. So she centered around everything the boss wanted, everything the executives, everything the management wanted. She did the best she could possibly do. But after a time, she just started feeling like she couldn't accept the ideals of the management. She couldn't accept the way the boss and the executives were wanting her to do things. And she really struggled. And she thought, why do I just feel so off in this? Even though I'm working so hard, I'm doing all the right things. Well, then she kind of tried to put her focus a little bit more on her relationships. She broke some hearts. She got her heart broken a few times, and eventually she settled into a marriage, and she even had a couple of children. And yet something felt off again. She noticed that she didn't really feel like she could fully be herself or that she could fully speak up. She started noticing that all the roles that she had, all the people depending on her, were really always taking a priority. And she started to grow weary of this. And then her body started speaking to her. She started having aches and pains and just feeling all kinds of strange symptoms that nobody could seem to figure out. She went to different doctors, tried to get different specialists, get different opinions. She even went to a lot of healers and tried all kinds of things that different people suggested. And doctor after doctor, just after a while, she started to realize she couldn't trust them. She just didn't feel like they knew what she needed. And she thought, gosh, is there something wrong with me that I'm just not finding the right people? And so she started kind of going in a little deeper around the spiritual realm. She started thinking outside the box of religion and the dogma of religion, and she found some different spiritual groups and communities. And then after a time, while it was okay for a while and she felt like maybe she had some community and connection and she was starting to click with some things, she kind of noticed the whole guru idea didn't sit right with her either. She noticed a lot of people just kind of following the herd, so to speak, and something wasn't quite sitting right. And she began to notice that she had this incessant, constant question inside of her of, what's wrong with me? After all, they all knew better, right? They were the authorities, right? Well, eventually she hit a breaking point and she could not ignore this anymore. And this came about just as she was really entering deeper into the second half of her life. She'd spent the first half doing all the right things, trying to learn everything, trying to fit into society, and then ultimately feeling very off when she thought she was supposed to feel really good. That was the promise, right? Everyone said it was supposed to be like that. Well, the more she sat with this, the more she sat with the way that she was feeling about things, she really felt angry. She started to feel betrayed that she did everything right. She did everything she was told. And yet, here she was, feeling so dissatisfied. Something was missing, and she felt like she had nowhere left to turn. Worst of all, her body was done. She was exhausted. The illness, just this mysterious thing with symptoms and, uncertainty and just, things that doctors just wanted to throw pills at, just seemed to go nowhere. And she had side effects from this or, challenges with that. And it just seemed like it was beginning to impact everything in her life. And she started questioning everything. Why did nothing feel satisfying? Well, then she had a very startling realization. Okay. She realized that she had been listening to all the others, all of those people out there in that outer wilderness. And they didn't really know what she wanted. They didn't really know what she needed or even what she felt. Heck, half the time, they didn't even ask her what she needed. But that's when she really realized that she didn't even know. She wasn't even sure of what she truly wanted, what she truly felt or needed. And this is when the real questions began to emerge faster than she could keep up. I mean, she had this unrelenting restlessness that just was incessant with not having the answers to all these questions that were coming up, all these things that she wanted to understand. And then she wondered, why have I not figured this out sooner? Why did I not see this sooner? And yet, despite a voice that often wanted to beat herself up and tell her there was still something wrong with her, she decided that she was ready to find the answers to those questions within herself. Something in her knew that she needed to go deeper. She needed to understand herself if she wanted other people to understand her. She was waking up to something deeper. She was waking up to her soul. And she was called from the outer wilderness of all the experts, all of the validation, all of the shoulds and expectations, into the inner wilderness that had been long unexplored. She was called to find her own inner authority and her own alignment. She wanted to stop doubting, to stop giving her power away, to stop seeking validation from everyone, everywhere, in every domain of her life. But how? I mean, this is what she'd learned forever. This is what she'd done for so long. Where? How does she even go about this? Not to mention everything she was so afraid of, because at the same time she was trying to navigate this inner wilderness and step into this inner wilderness, the outer wilderness just felt less and less appealing. And she knew she was disappointing some people. She was probably upsetting certain people because she was starting to, maybe for the first time, choose herself. And she just didn't know what to do. And one night she was tossing and turning and couldn't sleep. And so she got up, she put on her bathrobe, and she headed out to the back deck. And as she was sitting there looking into the moonlit night, the starry night, she felt the peace of the cool air on her skin, really appreciated the silvery moon's glow on the lawn. And at the edge of the lawn, she happened to live near the edge of a forest, and she looked beyond her yard to the edge of that forest, and something started to move. And she wasn't sure what. She got a little startled. She thought, is that an animal? But then it began to come closer. And in the glow of the moonlight, she realized it was this wild-eyed woman that she almost recognized. And as this woman drew a little closer and came into view, this wild-eyed woman held out her hand. Come, she whispered. It's time. Well, this woman looking out at this wild-eyed woman, this mysterious woman who had come from the forest, she just kind of startled a bit, and the woman seemed to vanish. And there she was sitting in the moonlight. But she knew what that meant, something about this idea, it's time. It lit something in her. It lit a fire in her that made her very determined to create a fulfilling second half of life, much different than all of the wandering she had done in the first half. She wanted and she was determined to find the answer to those questions that were constantly circling in her head of, who am I really? What are the gifts I have to share? What are the values I've been ignoring and the longings of something deeper in me? How do I even be me in a world that is constantly trying to make me like everyone else? How can I truly make a difference and find meaning in all of this craziness? Are my dreams even realizable anymore? Could it be that if she were to really remember the roots of her being, the essence of her being, the soul of her being, and to then take that remembering and reconnect with her deepest values, her deepest sense of purpose and meaning, what her unique soul came here to do, that she might actually re-envision a new life full of all kinds of possibilities that she hadn't considered before, and that maybe she could rebirth herself into that life. This is where the story begins. I know this woman because in many ways I lived her story. My own body eventually made it impossible for me to keep ignoring what my soul had been trying to tell me for years. This woman hit a turning point. Ultimately, she stopped asking, what's wrong with me? And she started asking, what do I actually want? What does my own wisdom know? This single moment, which sometimes doesn't happen in an instant or a single moment, but rather through a process over time, much like the woman in the story. There's a moment when we finally say, I have to turn inward. I have to put my attention inward, taking it off of the outside, out of the outer wilderness, and turn it into the inner wilderness. That's where everything begins. That's when we are ready to take the deeper soul journey. That's when the sacred feminine calls us and says, it's time. That woman is the reason this podcast exists. She is exactly who Soul Knows the Way was created for. What I just described, the doing everything right and still feeling lost, empty, numb. I call it soul sickness. And I believe it is the silent epidemic of our time. Soul sickness is not a clinical diagnosis, and it's not really the same as depression. Though depression may be present, it's not the same as burnout, though burnout often comes with it. We may feel some of these symptoms. We may feel a lot of grief, a lot of anger, a lot of sense of betrayal, or maybe bitterness. And we wonder what is going on. And of course, women in the second half of life, it's just so easy to chalk it all up to, it's just menopause. It's perimenopause. You're just going through the change. You're having hormonal imbalance, right? It's just age. Well, something in me has always believed that if I look at nature, if I look at the beauty of nature all around me, none of what we're doing as human beings seems to make sense. When I was young, I had some aches in my knees and I used to do gymnastics. And I remember my father saying to me, oh, you're getting old already, huh? You know, getting arthritis or something like that. And I thought, I'm 12. I'm 12. And that moment really, I'm so grateful because it stuck with me that like something in me just knew we don't have to get old and get arthritic and lose our way and become decrepit just because we shift into a different stage of life, okay? Soul sickness may come with some of those depressed, angry, frustrated feelings because we feel like we've been, disillusioned by life, disillusioned by our faith, disillusioned by the medical system, disillusioned by our education, disillusioned maybe by our relationships and our careers, the businesses that we thought were so upright and upstanding that disappoint us, all of that, we're going to feel those emotions. And honestly, the first half of life, we never had a chance to feel those. So soul sickness isn't just depression or burnout. While it may come with some of those symptoms, what it really is a deeper feeling of bereavement, a sense that we've been deprived of something or someone. There's this nagging dissatisfaction, this sense of deep emptiness that leaves a longing within us, a hunger within us for meaning and purpose. It can be a feeling of being lost or aimless. And there's a longing to come home to something bigger, come home to that something more we know has been missing. So maybe you can see how we might feel grief and anger and depression and anxiety and whatnot from all of these feelings, but these in themselves are not what soul sickness is really about. It's about a deeper disconnect from our true self, from our inner wisdom, from the wisdom of the soul. So what causes this soul sickness? How did we get here? Well, this is decades of living by external expectations, outsourcing our authority to others, overgiving until we have absolutely nothing left for the self. It's decades of silencing the voice within, trying to be heard, trying to fit in. In my years as a life and spiritual coach, I've worked with many women, and the story is the same. And while I talk about women in the second half of life, what's fascinating to me is it's really a notion of transition, that transition of being not quite right, feeling very off with the story we've been in, and yet not clear about the story we're moving into. Okay. And this might show up in a version of numbness. Maybe we feel like we are not sleeping well, and yet we try to sleep and we still can't get feeling better. The sleep doesn't seem to fix it because our adrenals are shot, and we're just, trying to grasp it one day after the next as best we can. And being numb is the best way we can do that. I've had clients like that. Other clients would say, you know, I don't really know what I want. If I press them to say, what is it you really care about? What do you really need? It's amazing how many women will say, I don't really know. I'm not really sure. And they will dodge the question. And they notice they've been wandering job to job, certificate to certificate, workshop to workshop, retreat to retreat, but they never quite get there. They still aren't very clear. They just know something's not right. Or there are yet other women that kind of feel like they're just going through the motions. They have all these conversations that they feel like they should be present for, and to some degree they are, but they're almost angry at the day-to-day expectations. They're almost feeling that numbness, but even an agitation, like I have to be in these conversations. I have to do these things. Here it is, another day. And probably the biggest thing I hear in a lot of the women that I work with is this all there is? Arriving in this ordinary moment. Maybe they're getting an award. Maybe they just got married or remarried. Maybe they bought their house. Maybe they just took on a new job. And then they find themselves still wondering, moment after moment after moment, is this all there is? Like, I'm not seeing the joy that I thought was supposed to come with all of this. So, why does all of this go unrecognized? Why do women experiencing soul sickness, why does our culture living soul sickness not recognize this issue? Well, part of it is that our culture has almost no language whatsoever for the inner life. It likes to put labels on things, even the psychology world. And there are some great therapists out there, so don't get me wrong, but it's so full of putting labels on things. It's ADHD, it's autism, it's, this disorder, it's that disorder, it's depression, it's anxiety. They want to label with something rather than looking deeper to soul, which is ironic because psychology, psyche, ology, the study of psyche is soul. It's supposed to be studying the soul, but the soul seems to get overlooked. Our overculture rewards doing and producing and achieving. It values the visible, the measurable, the clear, the linear, the end game, the goal, right? It has little reverence for depth and descent or the slow work of remembering, of coming back to ourselves, of reconnecting to ourselves. No wonder so many people would rather just numb out. And goodness gracious, aren't we a very addicted society with so many vices, so many addictions? And I would argue that probably 100% of us are addicted to something, even if it's the good works that we do. And maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if we're doing it because we don't feel that sense of deeper fulfillment, we're going to feel soul sick, no matter how great our works are. And in a soul sick culture, it seems to offer, in response to this, only more of what created it. More strategies, more productivity, more pushing through, more labels, right? And eventually, we quietly wonder if something is wrong with us, rather than thinking that maybe this overculture that we're living in is not quite what it's meant to be. Maybe it's stuck in something that it's time to shake loose from, right? And so we need to really begin to look at what is the cost of staying soul sick. I mean, we could certainly keep numbing out. We could certainly keep avoiding. Sometimes we don't recognize that soul sickness, like I've said, because it's quieter than a bigger crisis. Although the universe is pretty good at giving us the crises we need to recognize how sick we are, how out of alignment we are, right? If we stay in the soul sickness, then there is a tremendous cost. The relationships that we're only half present for, half connected to, maybe barely connected to anymore. The gifts that we sense are in us, longing to be shared, the creativity, the expression, but that we never offer. The version of ourselves that we keep glimpsing little moments of, like our woman in the story glimpsed that bit of some recognizable wild-eyed woman that knows it's time. We keep glimpsing this, but we keep losing it. And the years pass while we wait to feel ready to do something about it. And in my view, part of why I created this podcast, living a life that never feels fulfilling is probably the worst torture, the worst hell I think anyone could go through. It costs us in ways we're often the last to see. But I hope that you can hear this. If you hear anything today, the ache that you feel is not a sign that something is wrong with you or that something is broken in you. It is actually a sign that something in you is alive. Soul sickness is not a life sentence. It is a threshold. It is a calling. It is something deeper that we are being asked to step into. So let me take a moment here to just define what I mean by soul, because there's a lot of different definitions. And I think it gets used in various ways and means different things to different people, okay? So what I see that soul is, it's the seat of our inner wisdom. It's our truest, most essential nature beneath all the roles we've played, the wounds we've had, the conditioning and the dogmas and the expectations and the shoulds. It's a part of us that knows, even when the mind is confused and the world feels really loud and noisy and distracting. I often equate the word soul with our inner wisdom, our true nature, and also the sacred feminine. In a lot of the work that I do, it's this same essential presence. The soul is diffusely aware. That's the feminine. The soul wants to be in flow and creativity. That's the feminine. The masculine is so hyper-focused that it can create an overculture like what we're living in that takes us out of soul, that disregards all of those things, that disconnects from the deeper wisdom and yet keeps acting anyway, right? The soul is what opens to receive our most divine nature when we honor it, when we tend it, okay? We might think of a little acorn seed, okay? The acorn is within it. It has the blueprint of the great oak tree. And that oak tree is going to root itself deep in the earth, and it's going to grow toward the heavens, but only if that seed is tended, right? It'll grow toward the heavens of something brighter, toward that sun that will illuminate its growth, its journey, okay? That's how I see soul as well. The tending of that seed is what opens us to the greater expression of who we are meant to be, the fullness of that oak tree. Now, I also distinguish between soul and spirit. And again, people have different definitions. This is by no means comprehensive, even in my definition, because I think it becomes something that we keep exploring, that keeps evolving. But I see soul as not being the same as spirit, though they're deeply connected. I see the soul as the opening through which spirit moves into our lives. And when we're soul sick, that opening is closed. And the healing doesn't come from simply adding more spiritual practice. I think things like religion and spiritual practice can be a doorway to help us connect with soul, to open us to something bigger than our lower ego, day-to-day obsessions in the overculture, in the outer wilderness. But the true healing comes from clearing what has blocked the opening. And this is what I say reclaiming your soul is about. It's not about fixing something that's broken in you. There's nothing broken. What you're being called to do is remember, to return, to come home to the wisdom that's always been yours, but that the overculture has us disconnected from constantly, okay? So we have to take a journey to heal our soul sickness, or to reclaim our soul alignment, as I like to call it. And it's not a quick fix. It truly is a journey. It is more of a spiral, actually, that moves through stage after stage and can repeat these. And I've come to see through my own journey and many examples through many domains of life that we move through 4 main stages that I've come to call the 4 R's. And I want to paint a little picture for you, okay? The first is we want to remember who we are. This is what our woman in the story did, right? Who are you beneath the expectations, the wounds, the roles you've played for everyone, including the parts that you've abandoned? What are those parts? The things you've hidden, the things you've forgotten. This remembering is very much like the roots of the tree. This is stepping into the depth of who we really are, rooting into something that nourishes, sustains, connects us to maybe our ancestry, maybe our sense of the true gifts that we're here to share that we've forgotten, right? And from that place of remembering, the second R is that we reconnect to what genuinely matters to us, our unique values, not the ones we were told we were supposed to value, right? Our sense of our body, being in our body, not disconnected from it. Our sense of meaning. We reconnect to our relationship with nature and the sacred, reintegrating so much of what has been lost. And this stage, it's like now we've got those roots, and with that anchoring into something solid, the sap can rise through the trunk of the tree. All right, something can come alive in us. Now we start to be connected with more than just what we were told to be connected with. And from that place of remembering and reconnecting, we can step into the third stage, which is the re-envisioning. This is re-envisioning new possibilities that are grounded in that soul wisdom rather than fear or obligation or others' expectations or a need for validation. No, none of that. This is a grounded envisioning of the life we know is possible. And this is like the branches of the tree. And if we think about the branches of the tree, there are going to be lots of different branches in all different directions, all different sizes. And we can branch out, we can step out onto some of those branches and they can hold us. And other branches aren't ready to hold us yet. They're not thick enough or sturdy enough. And sometimes we might step out onto a branch, hoping for this new possibility, and it's not the right time and the branch snaps and we've got to figure out how to climb the tree again. And we might cycle back to remember a few new things to help that sap rise up again. And in the process of doing so, those branches that maybe were once weak can become strong. And once we are able to re-envision new possibilities and start to discern and see what we can step into, that's when we can rebirth ourselves. That's the 4th R, the 4th stage. And we're constantly stepping into this process of birthing. And with any birth comes death. It's the cycle of life. Things have to be let go of. The remembering maybe shows us what's not really ours. The reconnecting shows us what's not really ours. And on the next cycle around, we can rebirth ourselves into something even more aligned with our soul again and again, continuing this spiraling, just as one acorn technically holds the seeds for many, many thousands, maybe even, of oak trees. That's how our life can unfold as well. This capacity to spiral forth with these seeds constantly planting and rebirthing us into that life our soul has always known was possible, sharing our gifts, becoming that beacon that we're meant to be, and expressing ourselves as the creators that we're meant to be. And that, of course, is the fruits of the tree. This is the fruit with all the seeds, that fruit that we provide, fruit that can nourish us, seeds that we plant to go through the cycle again. It's so beautiful. This spiral is not a simple 4-step process or 4-stage process with a finish line, right? It's far too masculine for what we're talking about here. This spiral is a living journey. We move through the stages in different areas of our life at different times. We return again and again, each time going deeper. It's the work of a lifetime, and it's the most meaningful work, in my view, that a woman can do. This framework of these 4 stages, this spiraling journey, it's the framework of everything that I do, including my Solace program, which I will talk about more in future episodes, I'm sure. But the second half of life is not a consolation prize. It's not a slow decline. It is, I believe, the most potent and purposeful terrain a woman can walk. The soul hunger you feel is not a problem to be solved. It is your soul calling you home to a deeper life, a truer self, a wisdom that has been waiting for you all along. And something in you has known that. This is ultimately why I created Soul Knows the Way, a podcast to guide us in reclaiming our depth, wisdom, and wild nature. It's a space for women in the second half of life who are done going through the motions and ready to go on the real journey, guided by their soul. My own journey followed much of what the story I shared with you followed. I had different examples of it, different circumstances of it, but it's partially reflected in that story that I shared. I spent years doing my best to do it all right, and I felt pretty dissatisfied at every turn. And over the journey of this, I will share more of my story and examples of things as they feel appropriate for the topics that we talk about. And it wasn't so much that I needed perfection, although I leaned into that plenty, and that could be a topic for a future episode as a way that we cope. But I hadn't listened. I hadn't learned to listen to my soul and to honor its calling. I struggled in my marriage. I bounced from job to job, interest to interest. I wondered if there was any place for me on this planet. And I wrestled with health issues, and I put trust in all the experts and the gurus, and I lacked trust in myself. I exhausted myself. I nearly burned out my adrenals. That required significant recovery and a lot of time mending, you could say. And I ended up having a significant descent into the underworld of my being. I had to meet my own depths. And that was profoundly cathartic and healing despite frequent discomfort, a lot of discomfort. I spent too many years looking outside of myself for what only lived on the inside. And this podcast exists so fewer women have to do the same. So what you'll find in this podcast is going to be featured episodes where I will share deeper teachings on soul wisdom, things like what I shared today. Go deeper into some of those 4 R's, stages of the journey. I love the concept of archetypes and mythology, seasonal living, and listening to soul language in general. So cosmos, astrology, all kinds of things that we need to start tuning into more. The inner life is the heart of this channel. I will also offer some soul shares. These are going to be stories, maybe my more personal, intimate episodes, bringing you into my world now and then. Maybe I'll take you for a walk in the woods. Maybe it'll be a story from my own journey, something from the season that we're in, whatever is top of mind, maybe a great book that I'm reading. These might be shorter. These might be little takes, little moments, because I care about developing relationship in this process and sharing what I can of my own journey as well. I'm on the journey with you. I'm not the guru. I'm not some expert. I've just been through a lot and I'm realizing that I can offer a lot with what I've been through. And then I may also offer episodes that are like soul takes, my take on maybe a current cultural conversation reframed through soul wisdom. That's what I see this evolving toward. And eventually, conversations with extraordinary guests, healers, teachers, artists, women doing the deep soul work that this journey is all about. And you are invited to all of the conversations. Ultimately, we all have something to bring to the conversation. And that's how I see this. To converse is literally to change together. And this is a podcast just beginning. So you get to be a part of it from the very start. If something in you is recognizing yourself in what we've been talking about today, if your soul is leaning in a bit, I would love for you to subscribe, because what's coming may be exactly what your soul has been asking for. Now, I have created something special for you. It's a free guide called The 7 Keys to Reclaim Your Soul. It's like a sacred map to 7 essential pathways that help you sort of unlock things that have been blocked so that you can be led back to your soul. They're practices, they're opportunities to tune in and pay more attention and be more aware of what's blocking you. And it will include an audio series that I'm releasing alongside this podcast, which will bring each key to life. There's a link in the description or show notes wherever you're listening, and it's a perfect companion for everything we'll be exploring here. And I also want to invite you to my free community called the SOULSTEAD. This is a free gathering place for women on this journey. It's a place where I share episodes of the podcast. I share free seasonal gatherings with cosmic influences, what's going on astrologically and in the cosmos that might be impacting our season. And I share reflections or ongoing soul support. And of course, there's a whole community of women, kindred souls on the journey, to walk it with us, because we shouldn't be doing this alone. It's a sanctuary away from the noise of social media. So it's not a Facebook group or some social media platform. And it's filled with women who genuinely want to connect to the language of soul, who are listening to soul. That link is below as well. And I hope you will join me at the hearth in the SOULSTEAD. Whatever brought you here today, whether you stumbled across this by accident or whether something in you has been quietly looking exactly for this, I want you to know you are not imagining it. You are not imagining the ache. The ache is real. The longing is real. And the wisdom you need is not somewhere out there in another book, another program, another teacher. It's been inside you all along. My work and this podcast is simply to help you remember that. The next time, I'm going to introduce you to those 7 keys and share a bit more about why I believe they are essential in reclaiming your soul and offering guidance on the journey that I've been working with for years. The first key may surprise you with how simple and how foundational it really is. So I really hope to see you there in the next episode. Until then, until that time, keep tuning in to the language of soul, because soul knows the way.